Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Flying with Ryan show. I'm Ryan and we're flying. I'm sorry about all the mess. We're currently working on the sim van, so doing a little bit welding, so I'm really dirty. But I wanted to share this podcast episode with you. My next guest is an entrepreneur. He is the head of Smokehouse Pilots Group, and he's a very good friend of mine. I go ahead and give him a little introduction before the episode, but it was a lot of fun, and I can't wait to have him back. So please welcome my guest, Gabe Muller. And guys, remember, if you get anything out of these podcasts, please smash the thumbs up button, send us a like, send us a comment, and consider joining one of our tier classes on Patreon. That Patreon is www.patreon.com/Flying with Ryan show. Thanks and enjoy the episode.
Love it. That's great. Alrighty.
All right. I can hear you great. How is the audio on my end?
All is good.
All
All
right.
is good, man.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do your intro real quick.
All right, cool.
If that's all right. So my next
Sounds good.
guest is a Cirrus Aircraft Owner. He is the host of Hangar Flying by Smokehouse Pilots. He's a friend and he is a mentor. And his professional life is full of helping entrepreneurs reach their goals through the entrepreneurial operating system. And come on, this guy has the best smile in aviation. So please welcome my friend Gabe Muller to the show. Welcome,
Hey,
dude.
hey, thanks, brother. I appreciate that. What a nice intro. I really do. I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries, dude. So
Good
how
to
you
be here.
been?
I've been well, dude. It's been really busy. It's been just rocking and rolling, Everything's going well.
How's the
So
podcast going?
podcast is going well. Trying to launch a podcast every single week, which is a lot of work. And I love it, and we have done that ever since we launched it. So every Monday morning about 8:30, one drops, and so that's what I've been doing.
Oh, that
So
is awesome. That is so freaking cool. So okay, so are you doing just the free episodes, so just your YouTube, or do you guys have like a Patreon or
right now I don't have a Patreon, but I'm thinking about it.
okay.
And my goal was really to just just to kind of start it and kind of see where it went. You know what I mean? Like it
Sure.
wasn't something that I overly planned for. I mean, well, I caveat that. I mean, I thought about this probably a year and a half ago,
Mhm.
and it was one of those things where I thought, if we do it, we need to do it right. And so you can't
Right.
kind of like as you got to do it right. And so it's sort of like
Totally.
you got to plan for that, make sure you have content and all that good stuff. So we used Sun and Fun to kind of be the launching pad of that.
Yeah. I seen some of those interviews. That was really awesome. And I mean, what a great event too for,
Yeah,
to launch a podcast, especially, one that's focused like, in aviation. It's such a niche market.
it
You
really
know?
is. Yeah. And there's so many great people, right? And so it was
Oh yeah,
just,
there's so many awesome people to talk to.
yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm glad
one of
that we cross paths in aviation, brother. That's cool.
and I think in talking to you about a year ago, we were, talking about, hey, there should be a podcast. We should do this, we should do that, you know.
Yeah. That's
So
right.
it's really cool to see that idea come to fruition.
That's awesome, brother. Thank you. Yeah.
So I have a Discord and I allow them to ask a question of the guest. So if that's cool, I just like to ask you one of the questions that they've asked.
Yeah, sure.
So this is from Avid Cessna 012, and they said, what is one thing about owning an airplane or aircraft ownership that you would like to see change?
Wow, that's a great question. One thing about airplane ownership that I would like to see change. Um, just give me a second. I want to make sure I
Sure.
answer
Yeah,
this in a
absolutely.
thoughtful way. Um, boy, there's a well, first of all, there's a lot to airplane ownership, right? And so, airplane ownership is something that I kind of dove into 3.5 years ago, and so it was tough to kind of know the way. And I guess there it is. So basically, I think that whenever I went through this, and if something could have been different or changed, it'd have been pretty nice to have some sort of roadmap or some sort of guide, if you will, and maybe there is out there. Maybe I didn't find it, but something where I could really understand the ins and the outs of the cost of plane ownership, the realistic cost of plane ownership. And
Okay.
so that would be one. I think that and because there's so many things out there, and it's just hard to understand like what is accurate and what's not.
Right.
And so I was going with my gut on some of it. I was going with a lot of people I trusted, and which is awesome.
Mhm.
But again, it was just one of those things that I was kind of going in blind. And if there was a way to kind of like hey, we're going to buy an airplane school sort of deal, like a course, like here's everything you want to know about this. I
Right.
think that would be really, really cool. And, again, I don't know what other people think about that, but I do think that that would have been something that would have been super beneficial for me. And I got pretty lucky. I bought an airplane from a gentleman that I'm now best friends with. So
Okay.
it I had flown that airplane for a while before I even bought it. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, and that's another thing that I wanted to get into. So your airplane just came from annual, correct?
yes, sir. That's
And how
right.
did that go? Walk me through that.
Well, so this annual was a bit different because this was also the 10th year for my parachute, right? So every Cirrus has to have a parachute repack or replacement, whatever,
Okay.
every 10 years. And so that happened at the same exact time as my annual happened. And so they fell on the same month. And so, which was good because I mean, then I didn't have to have it down twice, right? So it was
Okay.
good.
And
But
for
as
those
far
of the for those who don't know the airplane that you fly and the system that you're talking about, could you just explain a little bit, just kind of about your airplane and that safety system that has to be checked and.
yeah, absolutely. So I fly a Cirrus SR-22, and so um, it's a 310 horsepower Lycoming IO 550 engine, and so it's a great airplane, and it's a four-seater. Inside of it, we have a parachute, and so it's a great safety feature. It's called the cap system, and so it is a great feature for this type of aircraft. I don't know if there's any other certified aircraft out there with a parachute. Cirrus is certified, of course, and so if you lose your engine at or above 700 feet, you could pull that handle inside the cockpit. It's basically above my head, about right here, and it will basically blow out. The rocket will blow out through the carbon fiber or the composite, in my case, composite, um, the parachute. And so that parachute grabs the entire airplane. And then what happens is, if you watch some videos, you're first of all you're going to be kind of nose down. I think it's 133 indicated as far as the airspeed that you
Okay.
can't go above.
Sure.
So if you gotta slow your airplane down a bit and then pull it, and your nose is going to drop, and then as soon as it's probably 7 or 8 seconds, that the line cutters kind of come out and your nose comes back up, and then you'll float down to the ground. And so it's a huge, huge safety feature. Now, of course, there's a bunch of people out there that say, hey, you fly a plane with a parachute, and that's not real. That's not a real plane. You know what? I think that it's a great safety feature.
And
I
so
take
what
it
is
every day.
what's the minimum height that you can use that at?
600 feet AGL.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So
So
so there is I mean, for people to sit down and criticize the safety features, I mean, just one more thing on your airplane to be safe.
I'm all about safety. And Cirrus, I'll tell you, does a phenomenal job of building safety into their aircraft. And so, I've been fortunate to fly it. I think that one of the things, here's a funny thing. I always find it funny whenever someone says, well, you fly with a parachute. And I say, well, let me just ask you, doesn't a fighter pilot fly with a parachute?
Exactly.
I mean, it's a safety feature. And
Hmm.
so at the end of the day, do what everyone needs to do as far as be safe. But as far as about going back to the annual, Um, we had a lot to do, and thankfully the engine was great. My engine runs really well, knock on wood. And so that
Sure.
was kind of relieving, but lots of little things, and so it kind of added up. But great, great shop down in Georgia, and then they ended up doing the parachute. So both of those things back to back. So it only took about a month for the entire thing to be done, and then it took me a month to go get it just due to my schedule. So it
Sure.
was it was gone for 2 months. So
What's the longest annual that you've done so far?
that's probably about it.
That okay. So normally they're what, like 2 weeks, and then whatever it takes
Yeah,
you
two,
to go
three
get it.
weeks. Yeah, yeah. And I've done it, I've done an annual in a few different places over the last few years. And so it's kind of just trying to find that sweet spot, and so and close and local. In this case, I had to go to Georgia. Well, I guess I could have went to Pennsylvania, but I went to Georgia just because of what I learned about DLK Aviation and that they were good with the parachute thing. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So what drew you to the Cirrus? Was it that you've flown the airplane a bunch, or, what kind of led you to 333 Whiskey Sierra?
Well, let's see. So I was flying 172s, of course, and it was in 2017 that one of my buddies went and got a checkout in an SR-22 at a place called Open Air,
Okay.
and I went flying with them in the back seat, him and his instructor, and I was blown away by like just the difference in the aircraft, right, of what I was flying versus flying in this SR-20. And so it was at that moment that I said, I'm going to get checked out. And so I got checked out in the Cirrus. And so I started on the 20. And then I got transitioned into the 22, and which wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, pretty straightforward.
Hmm.
Um, and then, I was flying it a lot, and flying an SR-22 in Northern Virginia is very, very costly. So I had to really figure out like what's feasible here. And everything in aviation is expensive, but boy, the rates of renting an SR-22 are pretty, pretty up there. So it was at that moment where I'm like, we're gonna have to do something. And so at the time, we ended up selling a house and ended up buying the airplane, and taking, just able to kind of get into this aircraft. And so the only reason that happened though was because my buddy, well, let me back up. This is actually a very interesting story.
Sure.
One
Yeah.
of my buddies, he, well, now Scott, who I bought it from, one day on Smokehouse, he said, "Hey, does anybody want to go to Sun and Fun with me?" Right. And I'm like, I don't know this guy, but that sounds freaking awesome. And so I messaged him back right away and I said, "Yeah, dude, I'll go." And again, never had met this guy. Right. And so we talked for like 2 or 3 weeks over text, and he said, "Meet me at the airport and we're going to take off at whatever date at this time. And then we'll go down to Sun and Fun." I'm like, this sounds freaking awesome. So literally walked into the terminal, shook hands for the first time. I have my backpack and my tent and everything. And we loaded up 3 Whiskey Sierra. And I remember it because it was so windy. And I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
"Are you good to take off?" And he's like, "I'm good." I'm like, he goes, "It's going to be bumpy." I'm like, "Okay." And it was. I mean, we had an air met the whole way down to like North Carolina.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
so that's how it all started with 3 Whiskey Sierra. It was because of basically a post on Facebook where I didn't know this gentleman, but I took a risk and said, "I'll go with you." We both camped out in our tents, on the airfield there at Sun and Fun, and had a great week. On the way back, he said, "If I ever sell it, you'd ever be interested?" And I said, "Of course."
Hmm.
And so that's how that kind of happened. And so, one thing led to another, and here we are.
Wow. Okay. So it was actually Smokehouse was already around before.
Yep.
Explain how that came to be.
Yeah, so Smokehouse is an interesting enigma. It's it started back in 16, 17. I started the Facebook group in April of 2017.
Okay.
But before that, there were some guys and myself who would go on these what we would call flyouts. There was a flight school in Leesburg, Virginia, that they arranged what they called flyouts, and so
Hmm.
we would participate in these, and somebody would arrange the just the lineup,
Sure.
and so
Yeah.
we do
Yeah.
that all the time, and then 5, 6 of us would go back to a place called Smokehouse Live Barbecue to have you know barbecue and have a beer or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
and that's what we did. And then at one point, they started bringing in speakers and things. And so, long story short, that flight school ended up closing their doors. And we said, let's keep this thing going. Let's keep this fly out concept going.
Right.
So that's what we did. And so one thing led to another. The Smokehouse Live Barbecue closed down. So we had to go somewhere else. And when we went somewhere else, so we probably should name ourselves. So we named ourselves Smokehouse Pilots. And that's whenever I realized I think we have something here. And it just started taking off. And so people started joining these flyouts, and then going back to a different restaurant. And we started bringing in more speakers. We brought in astronauts. We brought in, airline guys, you name it. We've probably had them. And so it really started to develop. And and then the Facebook page took off, and so it's just been sort of like an evolution. And so now we do speak outs, where we bring in a speaker and we go to a restaurant, and then we do flyouts, where we take a bunch of planes somewhere for lunch, and then every month, and then we now, of course, like I said, host a podcast. So lots
Sure.
of things that are going on in Smokehouse.
And so I see you guys are also in with the younger crowd, in the younger community. You guys are focusing a lot in aviation, education, and safety. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, so we've been involved in a lot of different youth programs. There was a program up here in Virginia called the Aviation Expo, and so we always set up a booth there, and we meet a bunch of students, and try to just introduce kids to aviation, you know. And so there's a ton of Smokehouse Pilot members who are part of different public benefit flying organizations, such as STEM flights, things like that. And so we do have a pretty good ability to impact the youth, and so it's been a lot of fun to do that. We do raise funds to provide a scholarship to a student, and so
Okay.
that's been a lot of fun. And so it's just been kind of an organic thing, man. You know what I mean? Like it's just been one of those things that one thing leads to another, and try to get these kids into the airplanes. And so, as a matter of fact, come Sunday, I'm taking uh, a kid to Easton, for our flyout. He's going to join me
Oh,
in the
that's so
Easton
cool.
flyout. So yeah, so he's been a STEM student before with one of my buddies. They actually used my airplane for his very first flight.
Oh,
And so his
wow.
mom reached out and said, "Hey, can he fly with you on the Easton flyout?" And I said, "Absolutely." So he's going to fly with me on Sunday. And so he's, I think, 13, 14 years old.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
That's so
So,
cool.
yeah. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
And what got you behind the controls? How did that start for you?
Well, so it's interesting. I'm from Indiana. I don't have an aviation background at all. Born and raised in just north of Purdue. And when I went to college in Ball State, which is in Muncie. And after college, I moved to Florida, Fort Myers, and I was working at a financial planning firm right out of college, right? And so I was,
Okay.
entry level job, just doing, an operations gig, whatever. And I was always leaving the office, grabbing a Subway sandwich, and going over to, at the time, Page Field in Fort
Yep.
Myers.
Know it
And
very well.
do you?
Oh
Nice.
yeah, yeah. My mom, so when they moved from Pennsylvania, they moved down to Fort Myers. And I
That's
basically
right.
followed right out of high school.
I do recall this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So there you go. So yeah, man, I was right off of College Parkway. And so the planes were flying over, small
Oh
planes, right?
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
this is freaking awesome. So I would go to, with my sandwich, I would go over to the Page Field Airport, and I would sit right beside the fence line and just watch airplanes. And I learned that there was this thing called live ATC, and I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm
Oh,
watching these guys land, listening to this. I'm just having lunch, and then I go back to the office and work. So again, going back to this, I'm like, I'm in financial planning. This is interesting. And I'm in operations. How can I learn the operations of like an airport or an airplane or air traffic, and then correlate that back to financial planning? So financial planning correlated with, call it, flight planning, something like that, you know?
right, right, right.
And so I just started writing about it. I mean, I just started writing, and just learning and just kind of researching flight planning. And of course, I knew financial planning. So it was just kind of one of those things. And so then I went to an air show. Sorry for the long-winded
No,
answer here,
no,
but
dude, this is awesome.
I went to an air show, and it was just a beautiful day. And I remember they were given discovery flights that day, but they said sign up, and you could get a discovery flight for maybe like an hour, and if we pick you, we can make it happen this week. Well, of course, I made friends with the flight instructors that were there. I'm just talking their leg off, right? And so
Sure, yeah, yeah.
I put my name in, and of course, at the end of the show, they drew my name, and boom, I was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome!" So, I ended up going that next week and did a discovery flight, and it was then about 8 months after that that I had my PPL. So, I
Oh wow.
basically dove right in and got it in about 8 months.
Oh
So,
wow. Okay, so yeah, you did definitely the fast track
yeah,
uh For those who don't know, it's normally 40 hours for you to get your PPL, and generally people, don't like to have you go do your check ride before 60. I have heard that, 40 being the minimum, but
Yeah, that's the minimum FAA requirement. Yep.
and everybody I talk to is like, yeah, you're not ready before 60. I know people who haven't done their check ride before 100. So,
Yeah, I had some really good instructors and Greg and Wes, I had two and they were phenomenal. And so yeah, man, it just kind of started taking off. It really just
no pun
it took
intended.
two. Yeah. And it just led to one thing after another. And so I remember I think I got my PPL literally on 4th of July.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
in
Okay.
2000, yeah, in 2010. So that was a good party that night.
Sure. Yeah.
And then that was in 2010. That was in 4th of July 2010, and then I ended up moving to Virginia in in February of 2011. So I've been in Virginia since then.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then
Um,
whenever I got here, I had zero friends here again, right? Of like, how do
sure.
you break into this whole aviation community? And then it took a while to kind of get that whole smokehouse thing going, till 16, 17. So there was a lull in there as far as being with people that were aviators. And so I kind of, I was on this track of like flying a ton, and then I moved here and it kind of went this way and
Mhm.
it kind of plateaued. And then boom, all of a sudden it took back off again once we were able to build the community.
Yeah, once you're able to have friends, you're able to have, like-minded stuff, you
Yeah.
know. That's the one great thing that's about the aviation community, and I can't stress it enough, is that if you just join one flight group,
That's right.
just one, and it's not enough just to join them, you got to be active in them. 'Cause once people see you're active in them, once people see that, yeah, okay, well, you'll push aside, other pleasures, to go ahead and go do this or go help somebody,
That's right.
work on something, or hey, do you want to go, pick up an airplane? And I mean, this community is just so tight knit, and if anytime you ever reach out for anything, there's always somebody that can give you, even if it's just a little bit of moral support. you
Oh
know
yeah. Yeah.
that's been amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I always say, the community is just a group of strangers who care about each other a little more than they should probably. I mean,
Well,
that's
and
really what community is, and so it's
and
amazing.
it's been for me very helpful. I talk a lot about mental health. I talk a lot about I talk a lot about, keeping yourself right, just again because for so long I was on, just the total wrong path. And we've talked off camera about that.
Sure.
And it's been this community that's, I've said kept my feet to the fire, I would say,
Hmm.
and kept me accountable. If it
Hmm.
wasn't for them, I don't know, where I would be. And although, you, you know, um, just how welcoming back everybody has been,
Right.
once
Right.
once people start to see that you're doing the right thing and you're actually, making, a good attempt, it's amazing how, many people you thought weren't looking,
Yeah.
or thought just didn't care. And it's just like, no, they care. They're just waiting for you to get on the right path.
Yeah.
But to jump off of that just really quick, if you had to give one piece of advice to pilots in a mental health aspect, what would that advice be?
Tell me more about the question as far
Piper's
as,
the question. Okay,
yep.
so just about like what you do for your mental health, and as far as far as it relates to flying, and as it relates to staying motivated, keeping in the air, not getting discouraged, you know
Got it. Got it. Got it. Well, look, I mean, I think that learning how to fly is a very challenging. It can be very, very challenging, right? And you can get discouraged because of, maybe you're going out there and not able to hit those landings that day or whatever it is, right? There's so many things that, or you can't pick up, and retain what's going on in the IFR world, right? We could talk about that. That's a whole other world.
no, sure.
Um, but I think that one of the things that aviation and flying an airplane does is, from a practical standpoint, is it changes your perspective, literally, right? Because you're literally taking yourself off the ground and you're kind of rising above all the bullshit. Sorry, all the bullshit
Oh,
that's on
dude,
the
it's not a
ground,
family show. You're good.
all the bullshit that's happening on the ground, right? And
Sure.
so sometimes I think what I found personally is that it's hard throughout life, whenever things are happening,
Hmm.
it's hard to change your perspective sometimes, because if you're so close to it, it's very difficult to see it differently. And
Sure.
so what I've realized is that flying literally changes your perspective. And sometimes you have to do that in order to see other solutions and see other possibilities. And so that's why whenever you see a student or even a pilot getting frustrated with X, Y, or Z, and just kind of down and out, whatever it is, it's like, make sure that you're safe to fly. Make sure
Mhm.
that you go through all of those good things, the I'm safe checklist and all that. But literally put yourself in a different state or different perspective so that you can see things differently in order to maybe come up with different solutions. And I
Sure.
think that that perspective is it's like so broad.
Hmm.
That's also, I think, one of the things that I think we as pilots sometimes lose sight of, because if think about it, if you're head down buried in a book learning IFR stuff and you can't seem to pass the damn test or whatever it is, I don't know, well, maybe just go out and remember why you're doing this and
Right.
freaking getting in an airplane and just go fly. And
Sure.
like, so that perspective, I think, is something that I know that may or may not answer your question, but I do. There's so much to the mental health side of things within
Sure.
aviation, but I think that that particular approach of just changing your perspective is a very important one. Sometimes we forget it.
I feel like I definitely agree with you. I definitely feel like we need, because there's not a complacency checklist.
Right.
There should be a complacency checklist. I have found, at least down here and flying in Texas, a complacency seems to be the thing that gets everybody into trouble across the board,
Right.
you know.
Mhm.
Um, so definitely I think ways to mitigate that, if somebody out there who's listening is, into safety and wants to, go ahead and tackle that, I think that you could have a 10-year job doing you
Well,
know,
well, think about it. I mean, I think complacency is probably one of those things that obviously in aviation it will kill you in an instant, right?
in a
But it's
heartbeat,
also, it's also true in a lot of other areas of life too. And so,
Sure.
it's pretty cool. One of the things that I've been, doing is working, um, doing what I do, but correlating that back to running a business. And so, like, cool thing about aviation is there's so many different correlations to that in life, right? And so it's kind
Right.
of neat to look at.
Um, so as far as correlating aviation to business, how has aviation helped you propel, what you're doing, and kind of explain what you're doing in your professional life? I gave it a little bit of an explanation, but I'm sure
You
it's
did
not the
great.
greatest.
You did great, man. That was awesome. You nailed it. Boy, I mean, again, this one is a big one because it's sort of like it's my life is very uh, integrated from a standpoint of my professional and then my personal life, if you will. But so what I do professionally is help entrepreneurs and business leaders run a better business and get more of what they want from their business. And how I do that is helping them with their long-term vision, understanding kind of where they're going, getting them all aligned with that,
Mhm.
helping them with what we would call traction, or just the momentum of what we're doing, and basically the accountability, who on that team is accountable for bringing that vision to life, and then a healthy standpoint of how do we make sure that leadership teams are in a healthy environment, right? Like they're, they trust each other, they're working well, all that good stuff, right? So
Sure.
vision, traction, healthy, that's what I help teams and organizations do. And so when you look at that, it's basically what I'm doing is harnessing human energy in order to run a better business and doing it in a scalable and efficient way.
Mhm.
And so when you think about it, that's all processes and systems
Right.
via people, right? And so if you look at that, and then you compare that or contrast that with aviation, it's the same thing, right? I mean, what we are doing when we're flying an airplane is we're making sure that we're going through a checklist, right? We're going through a process. We're
Right.
going through a process or a checklist to make sure that we're safe to fly, that we're competent to fly, all the good stuff, right?
Hmm.
Uh, we're building a flight plan, which is kind of the vision component, right? Where are we going? And then how are we going to do it? We're going to brief everybody. We're going to tell everybody what's going to happen. We're going to let everybody know if we have a problem, if we have an emergency, this is what's going to happen. The same thing goes on in business, right? It's like, hey, if we're off track, we're going to have to course correct and do this. We're going to have to get another person. We're going to have to let somebody go. We're going to have to do whatever. And I think that I'm really, really passionate about drawing correlations between running businesses and leadership teams and that of aviation. And so that's kind of in a nutshell what I do. But the aviation side of things is a passion. But of course, running EOS and implementing the entrepreneurial operating system for business, that's what I do to support my passion.
So if somebody was interested in reaching out to you if somebody was listening to this and said, "Oh, hey, I could really use that for my business or my vision." How would they is it just getting in touch with you? Is it going to the website? How is that done?
Yeah, so I got all kinds of stuff out there. You can go to the website. I've got a website for EOS.
Okay.
You can hit me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, any of it. It's all connected. But I do have an EOS website, and it really does walk everyone through sort of the process and the model and all of that. But yeah, man, I have to tell you, like, I don't consider it work. It's just
That's
something that I
awesome.
that I get to do, and I I have this weird thing where it's like if everybody could find that, that'd be kind of cool in the world, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm very, very fortunate with that. So it's just been a fun ride, It's just been cool and seeing how aviation can overlap with business or profession.
And if you're comfortable to talk about it, what's your trajectory for EOS? What are some new things you guys are working on?
Yeah, so there's a lot that we're working on. Working on a what we call leadership lessons from the cockpit video series. So, as a matter of fact, next Thursday, one of my latest video will drop. And what I did is I talked about the correlations of running a business on autopilot and what that means in the aviation world, right? Like, how do you run an airplane on autopilot? And so I broke it down into three different categories and talked about that while I was flying the plane. So we have a leadership lessons from the cockpit video series. We are running a few different masterminds as far as bringing entrepreneurs together.
Oh,
And then
okay.
we're building, most likely, I think we're going to build a platform, a technology platform to help other leaders and organizations to kind of support them versus just supporting you know, what would generally be the CEO and call it the COO. I really want to help those other leaders that are running,
Okay.
finance and marketing and all that stuff. So we're building a platform that's going to, I think, help with that. So we're in the beta stages of that and just getting that run up. And so
Sure.
that's a lot of fun. And then I spend a lot of my time, more of my time in kind of some nonprofit areas and things like that. I do, like I said, the STEM flight thing. And then I'm on the board of a nonprofit called Tribute Aviation, which is a
Oh, okay.
nonprofit where we get veterans back into a steerman. And so,
Oh man. Okay.
yeah, so we do these events down in like Norfolk, Virginia, and my friend Kurt Muller, which interestingly enough, we met through Smokehouse. He has the same last name. We're not related that we're aware of, but he asked me to be on the board, and so that's what we do.
Is he part of the Flying Circus?
Kurt is not. No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a little further south, but he has a steerman, and so he literally puts these veterans in his steerman and goes and takes them on a flight.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
so
All the
cool.
links and stuff that you've talked about, if you could go ahead after we're done here, email those to me.
Sure.
Guys, I'm going to provide all of those down here in the description to the video. They'll also be on the page to the video. Um,
Cool.
so yeah, if you could just, and then, your personal links, if you have any dates or anything that you would like to, you know, eh,
Sure.
people can come and see you. And of
Yeah.
course, I'll put the link to Hangar Flying too.
Oh, thanks, brother.
Um,
Yeah, I mean,
oh
look,
yeah,
if anybody
absolutely.
out there is listening and they, have a passion for community and flying, um, please join Smokehouse. There's no fees. It's a free club. I mean, what we are is a social aviation club, and our mission is very simple. It's aviation plus community equals opportunity and impact. And so if you can get any one of those things out of that equation, then we're doing our job. And so whether that's a fly out, a speak out, just making a friend or meeting a person to talk about things, that's what it's all about.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm a member of it. I love Smokehouse Pilots. I can't tell you how many, opening up my phone every day and seeing, somebody else who's posted it and that being the first thing in the feed is just, it's amazing.
Thanks, brother.
And
Yeah, I
of
appreciate it.
course, I wouldn't have it any other way.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's kind of you.
Yeah, awesome, dude. And so what's on the horizon for 333? I see were you guys peeling the tell me that
Well,
thing's getting a paint job.
uh, that is that is correct. That is correct. It's going to have a makeover. How about that? And
Perfect. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as a matter of fact, as soon as we finish this conversation, I'll be headed back to the airport. So I was at the airport last night till about 4 a.m. With some folks and working through some things there, and
Sure.
so I'm gonna go take a look at it. But yeah, it's gonna have a makeover. We'll put it that way.
Oh well, yeah, of course. I don't I just want to tease it a little bit for everybody
Yeah.
out there, if any of the smokehouse people that are gonna listen.
Oh,
Um
I can't wait to see the final gig on it. But sometimes you just got to go for it and see how it comes out. But yeah, I'm
are you
excited to share.
doing interior too?
As of currently, no.
Okay.
There's here's the thing. I mean, I'm open and honest. It's like going through the annual, the parachute, now this, and it's a lot to do all at
Oh
one
yeah.
time. And so, maybe next year, something like that. But I mean, for those listening, it's a 2004, right? And so it's not a new Cirrus. This is a Gen 2. And
Hmm.
so, but I mean, I take very good care of it. And I mean, I'm almost at my hangar every day. I mean, live about, a quarter mile from my hangar. So,
And that's
closer.
a new thing too for you, right?
That is true. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
That is
how's the
true.
new house? I forgot to ask you about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking, man. It's great. I mean, it's really good. Built a podcast studio sort of deal, and then I just set up a flight simulator room, and so it's a certified flight sim, so I can actually do currency and things on it.
Is that by Touch Systems?
It's by Fly This Sim, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and it is all touchscreen,
Yep.
on the thing. But I think I've got 5 or 6 screens, and honestly, I'm still getting used to it and still trying to get it set up. I've got it physically set up, but I'm going through some configuration issues.
Oh
This is
yeah.
probably right up your alley, brother.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we just bought a van, and we're going to get in the material after I'm done with this here. We're getting the material to, because we're doing a full cabin. So the cabin you see back behind here is a Piper M500-TP.
Okay, cool.
We're gonna basically put it'll be drag and drop flight simulator. So, you're not limited to flying the 500.
Uh-huh.
You can import your steam gauges, and if you want to, you can, put G1000, G3000, 5000. You
Damn.
can do everything in the world with it. I've been working for the last 2.5 years on this to try to make sure that it's gonna work perfectly because Fly It Sim got the touch system
Mm,
certified. Now I can go ahead and it's a lateral certification. So I have a
wow.
DP that's at the airport right now that's helping me work through that. So yeah, we're gonna
Dude,
build
that's
it
amazing.
in the back of a van to be able to take around to schools and aviation events. And actually, we're going to be doing this podcast from the van, which is kind of why I'm trying to get it set up the way I am.
Dude,
So,
that's great. How did you come up with all that? Like, what's your vision on this? I mean, you've done a lot of stuff, it seems like, within that.
well, I have a pretty good comeback story, going from getting in
Yeah,
trouble for flying without a
right.
license to, now getting certified and, getting my AGI. Um,
Sure. Nice.
so I just want to share, what I have to offer. I want to talk to cool people. I want to hear really cool stories, and I just want to document the things in aviation that nobody's documenting.
That's good.
I haven't heard of an aircraft ownership podcast yet, which is, why I really wanted to bring you on. When we have a little bit more time, I would love to dive in more
Sure.
and have you on
Okay.
again and talk
Yeah, brother.
just
Absolutely.
specifically about 333 Whiskey Sierra.
We can do any of that, man. Anytime. Absolutely. I didn't mean to be too vague with you on that. There's so
No,
much to
no,
it, right? So,
no, awesome. Yeah, I, trust me, being vague, I know how it is in aviation where you want to give somebody something to look forward to,
right.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
um You know,
Yeah, this
that's
is great.
that's what I want to do here. You know, I want to give somebody, you know, people, I want to just ask the questions that people aren't asking. So thank you so much for coming
Thanks,
on,
brother.
being my first guest, man. This has been great.
I appreciate it, Ryan. Thank you so much. Keep up with the great work, buddy.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
Yeah,
and be
man.
safe and have fun, man.
I
Okay.
will. Yeah, and you got to come to Virginia.